we've been shouting this from the rooftops for years. He doesn't care about those people. It's all about him and what's in it for him.
Hi, I'm Maddie, Hale, and welcome to the Trump Report. Today we've spoken to Democratic strategist Ally Sammarco about how Americans are feeling about more spending being cut and whether this will add to the federal deficit, which was the absolute opposite of what Donald Trump said he would do. We're also speaking to you about how Americans are feeling when it comes to the Russia-Ukraine war and how Trump has been approaching Putin and whether Republicans are divided over it. So all that and more today on the Trump Report. You can watch us on Times Radio's YouTube or stream us as a podcast anywhere you get your podcasts. Ally Sammarco, Democratic strategist, thank you for joining the Trump Report today. It's been another big day in Washington after members of Congress voted for this the House passed a budget resolution bill, which was touch and go there for a minute, but Republicans seemed to get it over the line in the end. It's a bit controversial because basically what it would see is $4.5 trillion in tax cuts, $2 trillion in spending cuts, and allocating billions of dollars towards military and border security. But the controversy surrounding this was that it basically goes against what Donald Trump's entire campaign was about, which was bringing down the federal deficit, which is at a record high. So can you walk me through why this would be adding $3 trillion of extra debt into the US economy and why some Trump supporters might not be so into this?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think the bill is a disaster, as Democrats have laid out. They want to make cuts to extremely important and critical programs like Medicaid, Medicare, and Social Security that millions, like 72 million Americans are currently on Medicaid. So millions of Americans rely on these programs every single day, but Republicans don't care about that. They've made that clear that they want to cut tons of programs, tons of jobs, tons of agencies that many people rely on and that are really important for the safety of all Americans. And they do want to protect their billionaire class tax cuts. And so that's their priority. And they don't care that it adds to the deficit because it's never been about the deficit, right? It's about furthering their agenda. And so I think Democrats are right to oppose this bill. I think Americans are right to oppose this bill. That's why you saw Thomas Massey, the lone Republican, oppose this bill, because he knew that it was, going against exactly what they said they've been trying to do and what they've been trying to do with Doge, which is lower the deficit.
And basically, if this is passed in the Senate, it would mean that the House Energy and Commerce Committee would have to slash $880 billion. And yes, as you said, this might come out of Medicaid, which will affect millions and millions of lower income Americans and disabled Americans. If this happens, well, it's obviously proposed by the Republicans, but if this happens, how does this go against the Trump administration's actual constituents?
Yeah, I mean, there's tons of low income Americans across, rural states, red states, that will be affected by this. And they probably didn't think that that would be the case, but you've already seen so many Trump supporters and Trump voters have lost their jobs in the federal government across the country. And so, these don't just affect blue states or Democrats, it's affecting everybody. And so it's unfortunate, but that's what we've been warning about for all these years.
You mentioned Thomas Massey. He was the lone Republican that went against voting with the Republican Party in this bill. He basically said, "Why would I approve or vote for something that will increase the deficit by about $300 billion a year?" Now, the one thing the Republican Party do seem to be united on is the economy. So how divided do you think the Republican Party is now when you've got not everyone voting in favor of a Trump approved resolution bill?
Yeah, I mean, I would have liked to see more defect, but I am glad that at least Thomas Massey did, and he's considered a very right-wing Republican, and he's actually staying true to what they said they were going to do, which is lower the deficit. So I applaud him. I don't agree with him on much, but I do applaud him for doing that, and I think that maybe more will do that in the future, and will get the guts to actually stand up for their values instead of just going along with whatever Donald Trump wants.
Do you think, Ali, that this kind of bill was the start of what would show that perhaps Trump was lying to a lot of those lower income, middle class Americans who pulled him over the line because they thought he was going to take care of them and not take care of the rich?
Yeah, I mean, I think so many of us saw through his facade. He comes from money. He was raised in wealth and power, and his dad gave him $1 million loan. He's never ever struggled like how a lower income or a middle class American has. And so we've been shouting this from the rooftops for years. He doesn't care about those people. It's all about him and what's in it for him. And you can see that through his actions, and you can see that through his protection of wealthy people. And I mean, he's a through and through country club Republican. He owns country clubs. We know this. So now he's just showing us who he is, which we've already known.
Oh, well, on that note, Ali, Donald Trump posted a pretty bizarre AI video on his Truth Social page, which kind of depicts Gaza, called Trump's Gaza, which would show it being owned by the United States, home to 2 million Palestinians. What was your reaction to seeing that very kind of Vegas-like ad for the Gaza Strip?
I think it's despicable and disgusting. But again, that's who he is. He does not care about Palestinians. He's never cared. He's made that clear. He's always been extremely pro-Israel or pro-Netanyahu, who many on the left think is a war criminal for his actions in Gaza. But he's very close to Netanyahu. He's very close to other leaders that many consider dictators or are dictators throughout the world. And so this video, while it is absolutely despicable and disgusting, it's very on par. He's never seen Palestine as like a right to the Palestinian people. We've said it for this past year that he would turn it into real estate properties if he could. He would level it if he could. And I thought the video was extremely repulsive, seeing him and Netanyahu on a beach shipping drinks, as if it's, all fine and dandy. I think it makes the US look terrible. Like we have no moral compass guiding us here. And I don't think we do right now, to be honest.
I want to get into this update from the press, the White House press team. The White House press secretary Caroline Leavitt told reporters that the White House press pool is now determining who will be in the White House press team, basically who's allowed to be reporting on the White House as opposed to the White House Correspondents Association. Now, this coupled with the fact that AP has been refused entry to presidential events because they refuse to say that the Gulf of Mexico is the Gulf of America. Now, this move for the White House to be controlling what media is allowed in these rooms, what media is allowed at these presidential events, has been compared to the CCP and the Kremlin in the way that they control the media, they control journalists. Is that kind of your interpretation on the ground?
Absolutely. I mean, look, this is the party and the president that's been touting free speech for years, and you have Elon Musk who's, championing free speech with X, and I think so many of us have seen right through that, and that they like free speech when they can say what they want and they can say it without repercussions, but they don't actually like free speech. And so this is a perfect example. We're 1 month into the administration and they're already saying, yeah, no, we don't want certain outlets in here. We don't want people that might dissent or might push back on our agenda. I think it is so reminiscent of the Kremlin, and it's not what America stands for. We have free press and we have free speech because the American public has the right to know what's going on and how it's going to affect them. And so I think we're headed down a very dark path with their decision to do that.
And it kind of goes against what they were trying to do, as you mentioned, because they've brought in all this right-wing media, which is completely fine, obviously, to do to make it a little bit more balanced. But yeah, you can't be taking ones out, especially ones like AP. But in the last few weeks, there's been so much controversy surrounding Donald Trump and the way he's interacting with Vladimir Putin in the last few weeks. From your standpoint, as someone who's kind of in the thick of it, how do you think morale is in the White House, within the administration, when it comes to the way Donald Trump is handling Putin?
Within the White House, I truly have no idea. I mean, I think they'll all publicly back him and any statements he makes. They're all afraid of their own shadows over there. But I think a lot of Americans are horrified. A lot of Republicans are horrified by his comments that Volodymyr Zelensky is a dictator and Vladimir Putin is not. I think Any person knows that Vladimir Putin is absolutely a dictator. He's a brutal dictator, and he has been trying to occupy Ukraine for almost, what, 3 years now? And so the facts are just facts. They invaded Ukraine. They've been there. They could pull out of Ukraine and the war would end. And that's simply not what they've chosen to do. And so any kind of claim that Ukraine started the war or it's Ukraine's responsibility to end the war are just ridiculous and out of pocket. And so any normal American who's been paying attention knows that. And I think that it's despicable for him to say something and alluding to that.
And then earlier in the week, Ali, the US voted alongside Russia at the UN General Assembly, which was quite a massive move from Trump's team. But John Curtis, he tweeted, "I was deeply troubled by the vote at the UN today, which puts us on the same side as Russia and North Korea. These are not our friends. We want an end to the war, but it must be achieved on terms that ensure Ukraine's sovereignty and security and that deter Putin from pursuing further territorial ambitions." As a Republican member, John Curtis, do you think that it seems as if there are cracks within the Republican Party when it comes to Ukraine and Russia?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you've seen different lawmakers. You saw Nikki Haley, for example, posting that Russia is the aggressor here, and that anything less than fully supporting Ukraine and being on the side of Vladimir Putin is not something that Americans stand for. And so I think that's something that the Republican Party has to figure out really quick is where are they going to land on this issue? And if they want to back Donald Trump, it's not going to end well for them, and that they need to be on the side of American allies, and that they need to have, common sense here that we're not the country that is going to support, you know, dictatorships trying to conquer sovereign nations. That's not something we do. I know Donald Trump has expressed interest in doing that, but that is not something that we do. And so they really need to choose a side here.
Just finally, Ali, on the note of Elon Musk, he's obviously been praised in some circles and scrutinized in others for the way he's been handling his Doge appointment, heading that up, cutting various government agencies, a lot of important work that is now being taken away. Some employees from USAID have come out basically saying that they were allocated a 15-minute window to collect their personal belongings over just a 2-day period because they were fired or they were put on leave. You tweeted that if Doge was a serious entity, they would have gone to each agency and asked them to reduce their spending and submit a plan to do so. What do you think of Elon Musk's bizarre approach to the way he's slashing all this money?
It's exactly what you said. It's bizarre. I don't think there's any real rhyme or reason other than they're just going through and saying, we don't agree with this initiative. We don't agree with this program. We don't need that. But in the process of doing that, they're cutting critical jobs, and now they're having to rehire certain people because they realize they made a mistake. And I'm sorry, but sending out a mass email asking what people did last week is not a good use of time because people aren't taking it seriously, first of all. And then if they are you going to go through and read all of it? And how are you going to discern who is doing something productive and who's not? I mean, he's acting like it's so easy to respond to this email. But if it's so easy, why send it out in the first place? So I don't think they're a serious entity. I don't think they're actually rooting out fraud, abuse, and corruption. I think they're just choosing what they don't agree with, and then they're getting rid of it, no matter how it impacts Americans or takes away American jobs in the process. So, yeah, I think it's not exactly doing the job that Americans wanted to see them do. I think a lot of people do want to see, fraud and abuse rooted out and want to see the deficit come down and see lower spending, but this is not the way to do it.
Ally Sammarco, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.